Hi, this is Stevie. I bought some hydrangeas at Michael's. These are just silk flowers, but I wanted to use it as a prop for a class that I'm teaching. So I decided to do a little painting of these hydrangeas, and I wanted to share with you how I would approach something like this. When you look at all the petals in that flower, you think, oh, how am I going to paint that? But if you treat it like one piece, something all together, and just look at the values where the bottom portion of the hydrangea is darker than the top, and start it that way. And notice that I've outlined in pencil just a rough outline of some flowers, and I don't normally do that. It's really hard for me to stay in the lines with flowers. I normally don't draw anything, I just paint them. So this is a little difficult for me. But anyway, I started out by flicking some water on the paper. I'm using my Princeton No. 8 Velvet Touch brush, just a synthetic brush. And after I flicked some water on the paper, then I flicked on some color. And I'm using ultramarine for the darkest blue value, and cobalt blue, and then some permanent rose, so I can mix them together on the paper to get that variation in color. And I don't like to pre-mix my colors if I can help it. So notice, and it's nice that my ring light makes that water shine so that you can see where the water is. But all I'm doing is adding more water. Once I flick on that color, I add more water to my brush and just kind of spread it around using the belly of the brush. I lay that brush almost sideways just to use the entire part of the bristles. Now I'm darkening up the bottom of that object, since I'm treating the flowers all as one. And with hydrangeas, you can tell a lot just from the outer shape of the flower. Like when you look at that right now, I just took it away to dry it a little bit, but when you look at that shape right now, you can pretty much guess that that's a hydrangea if you do nothing else to it. So there are a lot of things you can just suggest to make a flower look like a flower. So I'm moving on to adding some leaves while the edges of that flower are still wet. I dried it a little bit, but not entirely, because I wanted some of that color to mingle. And what I did was I added some green gold color. That's like a yellow green. And you'll see some of that blend right into the flower colors. And I like that rather than having hard edges on my flowers. So the colors mingle together a little bit. And once I add the light green to my leaves, then I add some dark green, but notice I'm only adding it up against the flower petals, not on the entire leaf. I want the darkest part of the leaf to be up toward the petals of the flower. And then as the leaf moves away from the flower, it stays lighter in color. And the darker you can get that leaf up toward the flower petals, the more those petals will show up. So I'll be doing this a few times to get that green color darker, but for right now I'm just going to move on. But look how you can already tell it's a hydrangea, and I've really done not that much to it. So now I'm going to work on the vase, which was really just a gray color, not a particularly attractive color. And I don't have gray or black on my palette, so I mix it. And here I'm mixing it with ultramarine blue and quinacridone burnt orange, which is like burnt sienna. And notice that I mix it on the paper. I'll pick up a little bit of each of those colors on my brush, but not mix them. And then it mixes on the paper, and I really like the variation in color that gives. And I've got kind of a wonky looking vase there. I'm going to go back and fix that. And I'll have to go back and add more value to this vase as well. Just to I know that it's going to lighten as it dries, so just to get the color a little darker on the left side, right under the flower, and at the bottom of the vase. And there I started to pull out some color for a shadow, and then I realized when I looked at my photo that the shadow goes the other way, so I just kind of turned it around there. And I like how some of that color on the vase bled out. It gives it a loose look, and I like that. And so now my hydrangea flower is a little drier, so I can go back and add some more color to it. And I flicked on some water first, And now I'm adding some of the ultramarine and cobalt colors again with a little bit of the permanent rose mixed in. I just wanted to get some more darker value at the bottom of that flower since it had started to lighten up as it dried. So notice how I'm keeping the color. I'm trying to give it somewhat of a rounded shape, but keeping the darkest parts of the color down toward the bottom of the flower. And then what I do as I work up the flower is I rinse my brush and just use my brush with plain water to pull that color up toward the top of the flower. And that helps to give that illusion of that rounded shape of the flower. Now that I've got that flower pretty wet and I can't really do much, I'm going to take it away and dry it with my heat gun. And so I brought it back now, and I can work on yet some more darker layers on the painting. And I'm going to go back to the vase and get that a little bit darker, adding my ultramarine blue and Quin burnt orange colors to the vase to make it a grayish black. And the vase was, I think, just a plastic vase, so it was kind of dull. It wasn't shiny at all. Just continue to mix those colors. And when I mix that ultramarine blue with the Quin burnt orange, it takes less of the orange and more of the blue to make a gray. And you can play with it. You can get it more to the cool side or more to the warm side, depending on what you like. And I was trying to make it more to the blue side here because the hydrangeas are blue. So just making sure I get enough color. And I didn't leave a really white highlight there because this isn't a reflective object. And so I just kind of glazed over that with some water to soften that down. And there I am pulling out a little bit of a shadow underneath it. I like to mix my colors that are in the painting into my shadow as reflective color. So for example, the ultramarine and cobalt blues and the burnt permanent rose that I use, I'll put some of that into my shadow color as well before I'm finished. So notice how I was shaping those petals at the bottom of the hydrangea against the vase just by doing a little negative painting around them. And that's a nice way to do that. Here I'm doing the same thing with my leaf color, picking up some more of my leaf mix, and all I did was I added ultramarine to my green gold color that was already there. And it makes a nice darker value without much trouble. I don't ever use, well, I shouldn't say ever, but I don't like sap green, and I try to stay away from it when I can. I like to mix my greens. So there again, I'm picking up some more of the darker leaf color, the mix of ultramarine and the green gold, keeping it back toward the petal of the flower, and then lightening it as it goes out toward the edge of the leaf, toward the outer edge. And when I add the dark color, there you can see it. Notice how it makes that leaf pop out more. And I think I'll go back even a third time to do that before I finish this painting. Because the darker I can get it right up next to that leaf, the better it is. And I've got those lines around the leaves now with that green color, and I want to get rid of those, so I'll work on that later. So here, I believe I switched to a smaller brush for this. I think that's my Princeton Velvet Touch number 6. And what I'm doing now is I'm going to pull out a few of the hydrangea leaves to suggest a hydrangea flower. And when I say suggest, what I mean is I'm not going to paint 100 leaves. I'm going to paint a few, and see how I do that. I negative paint around the outside of the petal, and then I soften it right away. I pull it out with just some water on my brush to soften the edge so I don't have a hard ring around it. But all you have to do is suggest a few of those petals, and right away the viewer is going to know that's a hydrangea because they have distinctive petals, and of course the whole flower shape is very distinctive. So I try to find areas where it already looks like a petal somewhat, and then that's a good opportunity to further define the petal. And I want to get up into that light area and do a few there as well. And see, already you can tell without doing anything else. You say, oh, that's a hydrangea. You can see those petals. And it doesn't take very much work to do that. And notice when I do that, I purposely don't make a ring around all of the petals. That's very distracting. And up in the lighter areas, I just make a very light color to do the negative painting around them, not a really dark value. And doing the same thing down on the dark part of the hydrangea, the lower part. And I want to say here that when I'm looking at this color, I don't think it's blended out very well on the bottom. And I noticed that toward the end of when I made this video. So I went back after I did the video and softened out that darker ultramarine color, and you'll see it in the final photo that I posted at the very end of this video. I just took some water on my brush and smoothed out that color a little bit. So there I'm still making a few other little petals. And that wasn't, oh, one other thing I should mention is, notice these petals are fairly large. I see so many hydrangea paintings on the internet where they make these tiny little petals, and oh my goodness, I don't have the patience for that. And when I was an oil painter, I used to take classes from a wonderful artist named Hetty Moran. And Hetty was a floral artist, and she would tell us, don't make your flowers small. Your flowers should always be the ones to stand out. So make sure that they're bigger than your vase, and that they're bigger than the leaves. And by that she meant, don't make the leaves the center of attention, make the flower the center of attention. And I've never forgotten that, and I always think about that when I paint flowers. So that looks pretty good now. You can tell it's a hydrangea, but there's one other thing you can do. There is a little bit, the hydrangea centers, there is some green in hydrangeas. Sometimes it's on the petals, but the centers are also green. And you can see that I took some of my green gold color and dotted it in a few of those centers. A few, not every single one. Again, you're just suggesting it. You don't want to hit your viewer over the head and make it too obvious. Now I'm going back on those leaves again to get them a little darker up toward the flower petals, because the flower is what I want to stand out. And then I just wet my brush and pull that color out. And you could do this many times, but I think 3 times is enough for this video. Then going back, cleaning up my vase a little bit, fixing that up. And now my shadow at the bottom, you'll see that I'm picking up the colors I used in the flower, and I put a little of that in the shadow, and then I use some of that gray color, the ultramarine and the quin burnt orange, to pull out a shadow. And I'm using a lot of water on my brush, and as the shadow moves away from the object, it gets lighter. And then one more thing, and you have to sometimes wait for your shadow to dry a little bit, but I don't like hard lines on my shadows, so you'll see me go back and fix that at the end. Here I wanted to show you, you don't have to do this, but if you wanted those white petals at the top to show up more, just add a background to it. And there I'm doing some negative painting with cobalt blue, and as I put the cobalt blue around those lighter petals, look how they now stand out a lot more. So I just added the color up close to the petals and then pulled it out with water. There I'm going back and softening the edges of my shadow so that it's just not hard lines. And that's pretty much it. There you have my painting. I think I'm taking one last look at it to make sure everything's done. Oh, I forgot the veins in the leaves, and I don't make the veins and leaves real obvious, but I put in a few to suggest that they're hydrangea leaves, because their leaves are very distinctive. And I did that with my liner brush. And that's the part that I want to go back and soften once I finish this video. I don't think that color is smooth enough, not even enough. So there you have it. I hope this helps. If you like it, give it a thumbs up, and thanks for watching. This is the final photo, and you can see how I took my brush and smoothed out that color at the bottom. I like it much better that way. Thanks again for watching.